CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro is covering the Kentucky Senate race for us from Lexington. Aaron, this race on the Republican side became very clear when someone running in that race was persuaded by President Trump to drop out. And that made it a much easier path to victory for the projected winner tonight, Andy Barr.
That's right, Major. You know, all of the attention has been on the Thomas Massie race in northern Kentucky in that congressional district. Makes sense. It's a pretty unique situation there. But President Trump also played a role in this primary, as you mentioned. There's a businessman, Nate Morris, who was supported by $10 million from Elon Musk in sort of his opening salvo in terms of Republican spending for the 2026 midterms. But earlier this month, President Trump gave Morris an ambassadorship and also announced that he is backing Congressman Andy Barr over Daniel Cameron. That's the former Attorney General of Kentucky and was really seen as a protege of the outgoing retiring Senator Mitch McConnell. While Barr came into Congress the same time as Massie in 2012, he's definitely taken a different approach, and he has made a lot of friends that he says that have transitioned from the House and are now in the Senate that he thinks he can rely on should he win this November. But in his victory remarks, he really made clear that he does not want to take his foot off the gas pedal when it comes to the general election. He'll likely face Democrat Amy McGrath or Charles Booker. That race is still pending. Both are candidates that have lost in previous Senate races. But he made comments about what he called the far left of the Democratic Party. He said that they want to turn Kentucky into the, quote, Commonwealth of Kamala. In a reference to Maine Democratic Senate candidate Graham Plattner, he said, our story can't be driven by candidates with Nazi tattoos. So it's clear that Barr is looking to nationalize this race. But while I'm focused right now on the 2026 race for Senate in Kentucky, I do think the Massie results should put some eyes on Rand Paul in 2028. He's up for re-election then. He voted today for the War Powers Resolution to limit President Trump's powers when it comes to his military operation with Iran. You could definitely see some chatter of potential primary challengers to him in the next election cycle.
That's a great point, Aaron. I also want to take this moment to sort of take stock of Kentucky and its underlying political realities. When I first started covering Congress in the early 1990s, Mitch McConnell set about transforming Kentucky politics, which was decidedly Democratic then, to almost entirely Republican. Mitch McConnell succeeded in that effort, turning Kentucky into a reliably Republican state. But now it's a passing of a torch and criticism throughout Kentucky Republican ranks of Mitch McConnell himself, which was kind of an undercurrent of this Republican primary itself, even though Daniel Cameron came from the Mitch McConnell wing of the Republican Party.
That's right, Major. I remember one of the first elections I covered in 2019 was the gubernatorial race between Andy Beshear, the Democrat, and the then Governor Matt Bevin, the Republican. And when I was talking to voters, I heard a lot of people talk then about Daniel Cameron, who was seen as a protege of McConnell, someone that could replace him potentially in the Senate. Fast forward 6-7 years later, Cameron was declared a loser almost immediately once polls closed. It really shows that while McConnell has shifted the Kentucky political apparatus towards Republicans in the past 5 to 10 years. You've seen that shift even further right to match President Trump's version of the Republican Party.
It is a Trump Kentucky Republican Party, no longer a McConnell Republican Kentucky Party. Aaron Navarro, thank you so very much. I want to go to Nikole Killion and Caitlin Huey-Burns in Washington, D.C. Nikole, your thoughts on what we've seen play out so far this evening?
You know, I think just to piggyback off of what you just said, it certainly marks a transition to a new era in Kentucky politics. I mean, when you think about Mitch McConnell, someone who has served for some 4 decades now, I mean, he is the longest serving party leader in Senate history, even though he stepped down from leadership. But, you know, his impact still, I think, is wide reaching, particularly when you talk about the U.S. Senate. And so while, yes, this may now be Trump's party in Kentucky now, I think just like we have seen seen in some of these other races. McConnell, while sometimes he has sided with the president, there are many times where he has not. And so, I think you can also look at that as a dynamic in the race, particularly in terms of McConnell, because his name wasn't really invoked in this contest, nor was his endorsement really sought out. So to your point about just while his influence may seem waning, at the same time, I think we also have to remember what he has contributed not only to Kentucky politics, but certainly to the U.S. Senate as well, where he continues to stand up for his ideals, the things that he believes in. And I think that's something that he will continue to do going forward.
And Caitlin, Huey-Burns, I want to ask you about something that I think is part of the dynamic of the president involving himself in so many of these internal Republican Party primary battles. It seems to me that he knows whatever the results of the 2026 midterms are, he only has, after that, 2 more years in office. But what he wants after he departs is a Congress, House and Senate, with more MAGA-aligned Republicans, or the highest number he can create in these primary contests, because every single time the president gets involved, he tends to get his way.
That's right. I mean, he is certainly reshaping this Congress, but you have to ask whether this is in his favor in the long run. If you think about just the next couple of months, you have a couple of lawmakers who will be kind of in what I call a YOLO moment, which is that they are now unencumbered by the politics of their party. I mean, take a look at Cassidy, who voted for the War Powers resolution today. You have Tom Tillis in North Carolina, who's not running anymore, who has been a critic of the president and his own party. Obviously, Massey has been running that way for a while now, but will be even more unencumbered. And we'll see what John Cornyn next week does if he loses his primary. And the other point is, Major, that there is no doubt that the president has a hold on his party. As we've talked about all night, this is Trump's Republican Party. It has been for a while, but tonight really solidified that. But a primary is very different from a general election. Trump is the biggest driver for Republicans in elections. He's also the biggest driver for Democrats. And that is something that is both parties are going to contend with, but especially Republicans running in some of these more difficult battleground states. It's one thing to have a hold on your party in the primary, another about what that means in a general election, especially in a place like Georgia and other battlegrounds where they'll be fighting for control of that chamber.
There is reference sometimes by the president to a rhino Republican in name only. Maybe we will have an emerging YOLO Republican conference. Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you very much.